Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the least ideal Dvořák Symphony cycle by mostly major conductors. In other words, performances usually drawn from complete cycles that represent the weaker links in those cycles. It doesn't mean they're terrible. It just means they're not as good as you can find elsewhere. And if you were assembling an ideal cycle in which there would be no weak links whatsoever, none of these performances would make the grade. And I say again, it's funny. Some people have really complained, like, why are you talking about not good performances? Well, I mean, we've done whole videos about that, but I have to stress once again, these are available. And for whatever limited and pathetic thing passes for marketing from major labels these days, people might be encouraged to buy these things or to download them and to stream them or whatever they're going to do. They're going to get heard. They're particularly going to get heard within the context of larger cycles as a whole. And that's particularly true of Dvořák, because Dvořák's symphonies 7, 8, and 9 are ubiquitous. 6 is sort of hovering. 5 is even more hovering. And the first 4 you really almost never find outside of complete cycles. Very, very seldom. And so you're going to have these packages, and it's good to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, I think. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, here they are, the least ideal Dvořák Symphony. Symphony number 1, The Bells of Zlonice. Oh, goodness, this is going to shock you. Kertész and the London Symphony Orchestra on Decca. This was the first recording of that symphony I ever heard. It was, I thought it sounded fine, although it was kind of long for its material. Even then, I could tell that first movement just wouldn't quit. And it turns out it wouldn't quit because it has the exposition repeat, which is a good idea most of the time, except when Dvořák really didn't know what an exposition was for, which is sort of what happens here. It goes endlessly. It has more transitional material than it has main themes. And then you get to hear it twice. And Kertész's recording, while most of his performances in that cycle are marvelous, and it is rightly considered a reference cycle of Dvořák symphonies, this performance is a bit heavy. Over time, over listening, I don't think it sustains its length particularly well. And so it makes my list of less than ideal firsts. It would not be my pick if I had to pick a great Dvořák Bells of Zlonice. It was a work. You have to be indulgent anyway with this piece. He didn't ever hear it. He thought it was lost. It disappeared in his lifetime. So what do we want from the man? It shows enormous talent. It really does, and no mean degree of skill. But it takes a little bit of special pleading. And Kertész, who was somewhat averse to rehearsing and whatnot, was not a special pleading kind of guy. He was a spontaneity and excitement kind of guy. And we don't really get that here. Next, Symphony number 2, also a problematic work, but it was one that Dvořák hung on to and revised later in life. It's a pastoral symphony. It's very, very beautiful. It has terrific themes and one of the most glorious scherzos he ever wrote, the third movement, which is very developmental and not formalistic at all. It's just gorgeous. That really makes the whole piece worth playing. The finale also has some gorgeous tunes. It actually, the cool thing about it is it gets better as it goes. In the first movement, the problem is creating sufficient contrast between the first and second theme areas, because they're very, very similar and gently bucolic. The slow movement is gorgeous. I personally think it was inspired by the love theme from Berlioz's Romeo and Juliet, which Dvořák was playing in the Prague Provisional Theatre Orchestra at the time. And I think that it really deserves to be more popular, but it needs backbone. The whole symphony does. And it doesn't really get it from José Serebrier and the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra on Warner. This was a Dvořák cycle that I found somewhat disappointing. Never less than decent, but also never outstanding in any particular performance. And so you could really pick almost any of them from that cycle as a less than ideal Dvořák symphony performance. But there's some better ones. And the second seems particularly flabby to me. It's partly a function of the sonics, which for some reason just lack a certain amount of clarity. In a symphony that really demands it. Symphony number 3. Well, Symphony number 3 is gorgeous. It's really the first great Dvořák symphony, and it has a very original form. 3 movements with like a big funeral march in the middle, and a scherzo / finale combo at the end. And it's got a harp and a triangle. It actually had cymbals and bass drum originally, but Dvořák took them out on revision. Probably a smart idea to keep the finale from becoming a little bit too soon-to-be Slavonic dancey thing, and make it a little bit weightier and less noisy. But boy, is it beautiful! I mean, it's got fabulous tunes, and the funeral march rises to a huge climax where it does Dvořák's Tannhäuser Overture imitation. He was obsessed with the Tannhäuser Overture, by the way. And so, it's a great work. And Vladimir Válek, yes, one of several Czech conductors we're going to be trashing in this particular series, because they don't always get it right just because they're Czech, much as they try and make careers doing Dvořák just because they're Czech. Well, no, I'm sorry. Válek's Dvořák cycle is dismal. All kinds of strange tempos and odd emphases. And here you've got the most sluggish and unappealing finale, and what is without a doubt one of Dvořák's zippiest and most appealing finales. I mean, you have to work to ruin it, and Válek really works and really ruins it. The whole cycle's lousy. With the Prague Radio Symphony Orchestra, it's really a wonder that it was released. Supraphon, I guess, did it because they could. It was a cocaine hippo cycle, one of those productions that existed because the Prague Radio existed, and Dvořák, is their composer, and they needed something to do, and Dvořák, and they had a whole cycle. So they said, we'll put it out. Well, it seems to have vanished without a trace. I'm hoping it has anyway. It wasn't very good. Symphony number 4. Symphony number 4 is better than it sounds. It really is. What I mean is, with a little bit of indulgence, like, some fire in the finale. I mean, nothing beyond what an inspired performance would give, for example. It can be marvelous. It really can. It's got some incredible moments and beautiful movements. And, there is a singleton performance of the 4th under Thomas Engelbrock that's amazingly good. It really is. When you treat something as special and lavish love and attention on it, well, it's amazing what can happen. The 4th gets a lot of guff because of its finale that has one of Dvořák's 3-note up and down themes. Dun 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 bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum, and it repeats about 500 million trillion zillion times. But the second subject, it's so beautiful, and it's designed to break the rhythmic monotony of the first subject, and it works really, really well. So yes, it can be lovely, except it's not when Jerzy Belohlávek conducts it with the Czech fill on Decca. Oh, this is the dullest Dvořák cycle anybody ever came up with. It's just awful. It's a snooze fest from first note to last, and it's with the Czech fill. And Belohlávek, who's a wonderful conductor in most Czech music. His Martinu is fabulous, for example. But this is, romantic stuff that needs real fire and passion, and he just doesn't have it. It's so boring, and the finale particularly is just a slog. That whole cycle is just a waste of time. So symphony number 5 is an out-and-out masterpiece. It's as great as any symphony anybody wrote in the 19th century. No one gives it any credit. Nobody understands just how marvelous it is, except for some very few conductors and other people who are in love with it, as well they should be. It was the proximate inspiration, I believe, for Brahms' Third Symphony. I wrote a whole scholarly paper on it that passed peer review, so there must have been something there, possibly. And my nomination for least ideal recording is Andrew Davis with the Philharmonia, coming from his Dvořák cycle. Remember, he did a whole Dvořák cycle for Sony. Yes, he did. Andrew Davis was the conductor that, all major labels had conductors who got the leftovers. And that was Andrew Davis at that time in his career. He had the Toronto Symphony for a while. He was a talented guy, nice, sensible shoes type conductor. Rarely did anything bad, but also rarely did anything thrilling. And he got to do occasional interesting projects that would plug gaps in the label's discography. You know, he did the Fauré and Duruflé Requiems, he did the Borodin Symphonies, and then he did all the Dvořák Symphonies. That was a major project, and quite frankly, he could have really, really distinguished himself with that if he'd wanted to. But maybe he didn't have it in him, or maybe it wasn't the music that suited his temperament. Maybe he had no temperament. That was also a possibility. And so his Dvořák Fifth is, like most other things in that cycle, average. Desperately, death-defyingly average. So, I mean, obviously it's not ideal if it's only average. What a pity. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Now we're starting to get to the symphonies that at least got some attention. Six gets a little bit more play than 5, not as much as 7, 8, and 9. And there have been wonderful recordings of it and wonderful singleton recordings of it. So, there's Ancherl and Macaris and, a bunch of other people. I mean, Dochnani did a very respectable one, but Orozco-Estrada. Oh, dear old Andres Orozco-Estrada with the Houston Symphony on PentaTone. He did a batch of Dvořák symphonies, so he belongs in this pile of conductors who theoretically did Dvořák. And there's nothing that angers me more than people who do Dvořák because they don't have the standing or reputation to do Brahms, and they don't have, or Beethoven or somebody like German and more important. Ugh. I mean, you get the idea that people do Dvořák out of condescension because he's nice and bucolic and no one's going to challenge what you do. Well, Dvořák is just as great as anybody else, number one. And number two, he needs as much insight and benefits from as much brilliance and seriousness and commitment as you can bring to his symphonies. And Orozco-Estrada has none of that. He just blows through the symphonies in swift, light tempos, paying no attention to anything in particular. And they are at once fast and flabby. And that is an accomplishment. It really is. It's hard to be fast and flabby. I mean, I'm flabby and can talk fast. I mean, so I guess that's an accomplishment. But it's not good when you're talking about Dvořák Sixth Symphony. Trust me when I tell you that. So forget that one. Then on this, for 7, 8, and 9 now, here are, I thought, 3 really, really fun teaching moments. First, in number 7, Colin Davis with the London Symphony on the LSO's own label. Now, Colin Davis did a stunning Dvořák Seventh with the Concertgebouw for Philips, now Decca. It was glorious. It still is glorious. It's a reference recording. It's fabulous. Everything goes right. It's just amazing. Then he did a remake with the London Symphony. It was sluggish and slipshod and lax and oh my God, there's nothing of that original fire, precision, balance, exquisiteness, loveliness. It's all gone. Not that this 7th again is horrible. It's not a disgrace. But if you make the comparison, wow, how the mighty have fallen. And it very typically happens. Remakes aren't as good. Sometimes on rare occasions they're better. But no, not here. Similarly, Kubelik, Dvořák 8. Oh my, Raphael Kubelik, Dvořák, one of the great Dvořákians. Well, these were live recordings released on Orfeo, and most of them were wonderful. They really were. But his Deutsche Grammophon cycle with the Berlin Philharmonic is pretty stupendous most of the time. And this 8th is just weird. Kubelik was a highly improvisatorial conductor, and he could be very variable from one performance to the next. So could Colin Davis, actually, for that matter, as you can see. But here, the 8th can very easily fall victim to an excess of loving indulgence. It's such a schmooze-worthy symphony. It has these gorgeous tunes and beautiful orchestration, and just one luscious melody after another. And it can all fall apart if you lavish on it an excess of affection. And that's what happens here, particularly the finale and the scherzo, the third move, that waltz. Ooh, it can be sticky. I mean, it really isn't, but it can be the way Kubelik does it here. So this was for me, and what was otherwise a very lovely series of Dvořák recordings, a real disappointment. a real letdown. Sometimes I think familiarity does breed a bit of contempt. You find this irresistible need to just do something, and so you don't really question whether what you're doing is what the music needs. Or it may have worked in the context of a single live performance, but when you hear it on repetition, what then sounded original and spontaneous sounds incredibly mannered and tedious. Well, here's the locus classicus for when that happens. And finally, the New World Symphony. Oh yes, Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic on DG from 1964 or thereabouts. Karajan loved Dvořák's Eighth. He could almost not put a foot wrong in Dvořák's Eighth. He recorded it like 4 times, I don't know. And they're mostly very good. His best is the Decca one with the Vienna Phil, which is my reference recording for the work. It's stunning. I really showed so much affection and love in a good way, along with steady tempos and exciting climaxes. And he even lets the woodwinds be heard. I mean, he obviously loved Dvořák's Eighth. I don't think he felt so good about the New World Symphony. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't awful. But the funny thing is, if you heard it next to any of his recordings of the Eighth, you could tell, as night follows day, that, this one he liked and this one he just did. And especially in 1964, it was an interesting time for Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic. And it's another reason why I think these talks are interesting, for what you learn about the performers and what they were doing. Because in 1964, remember, he'd just done the Beethoven cycle, the Berlin Beethoven cycle from 63, which everybody was raving about, and which established Karajan as, the Karajan, the great Karajan sound, the wizard of sonority. And Beethoven doesn't really give you a chance to be a wizard of sonority, because that's not the way he thought about orchestration. Romantic music, with the gorgeous long string themes and things, well, there you can be more of a whiz. And Karajan just whizzed the New World to death. It's nothing but him saying, look what I can do. Listen to those strings. Just listen to those strings. Oh, and by the way, did I tell you about our strings? That's this New World Symphony. It's all Karajan and it's all strings, and it's very little Dvořák. It's thick and heavy and glutinous, and there's just this patina of legato slime over everything. It's so different from the Eighth. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating that it's the same way. But on the other hand, you get a sense of what he was excited about. It's like, this is my orchestra, and I can make it do anything, and this is what I'm going to make it do. And it doesn't make any difference what composer we're doing, because they're all going to sound like this now. That was it. So there you have it, my friends, the least ideal Dvořák Symphony cycle by mostly major conductors. I think there are a few surprises in there, hopefully. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.